At 4 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, I heard the sound that would change everything. That low, mechanical hum rising through the floorboards like a ghost from my past. I'm Jade, 70 years old, and for 40 years I was the head nurse in pediatrics at St. Mary's Hospital. I'd heard that exact rhythm 10,000 times before. It was the sound of a medical ventilator in my son's basement. My husband died 8 months ago. Marcus insisted I move in with him, his wife Amina, and my grandchildren, Malik, 8, and Sarah, 6. "You shouldn't be alone, Mom," he'd said, his voice dripping with concern. Their house was beautiful, clean, sterile, actually. No family photos on the walls, no laughter at dinner, just quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your nursing instincts scream that something is desperately wrong. For 3 weeks, I'd been hearing those sounds, always at 4 a.m., always followed by footsteps descending the basement stairs, careful, measured, deliberate, then the click of a deadbolt lock. My son worked ICU night shifts. He should have been at the hospital at 4 a.m., not creeping through his own house like a thief. That night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. My arthritic knees protested as I crept down the hallway, the hardwood floor ice cold beneath my bare feet. The basement door stood at the end of the corridor like a tombstone. I could smell it even before I reached it, that unmistakable hospital smell of antiseptic and IV fluids and something else, something wrong, something dying. I pressed my eye to the old-fashioned keyhole, my heart hammering so hard I thought I'd faint. What I saw shattered my entire world. There, in a hospital bed surrounded by IV stands and monitoring equipment, lay my sister Kim. My sister, who had been dead for 5 years. My sister, whose funeral I'd attended with tears streaming down my face, while Marcus held my hand and whispered, "She's at peace now, Mom." My sister, whose closed casket I'd kissed goodbye, believing her body was too damaged from the accident to view. She wasn't dead. She was right there, sedated, hooked to machines, her face gaunt and pale, her body wasted from years of immobility, but alive, breathing, existing in some terrible twilight between life and death, while my son, my own son, kept her prisoner in his basement. The IV bag hanging above her bed told me everything my nursing eyes needed to know. Benzodiazepines, heavy doses, enough to keep someone in a perpetual fog, trapped in their own body, unable to scream for help. I stood there in that cold hallway, my hand over my mouth to stifle the sob threatening to tear out of my throat, and I understood. The power of attorney, the life insurance policy, the monthly pension checks. My son wasn't caring for his aunt. He was harvesting her, but Marcus made one fatal mistake. The woman he'd trapped in his basement had taught him everything he knew about keeping patients alive. And now, I was going to use every single bit of that knowledge to destroy him. If you believe families should be built on love, not lies, hit that subscribe button. You won't believe what happens next. 5 years ago, the phone call came at 2 a.m. "Mom." Marcus's voice was shaking, broken. "It's Aunt Chem. There was an accident, a drunk driver. She didn't make it." "I'm so sorry." I remember collapsing on my kitchen floor, the phone still pressed to my ear, screaming a sound I didn't know I could make. My sister, my Chem, the woman who raised me after our parents died in that house fire when I was 12. She'd been 21, barely more than a child herself, but she'd dropped out of nursing school to keep me fed, clothed, safe. She'd sacrificed everything, her education, her dreams, her chance at a different life, so I could have mine, and I wasn't there when she died. The funeral was 3 days later, closed casket. "The injuries were too severe," Marcus explained gently, his hand on my shoulder. "You don't want to remember her that way, Mom, trust me." He cried during the eulogy, his voice cracking as he spoke about his aunt's kindness, her laughter, her love for family. I'd been so proud of him in that moment. My son, the ICU nurse, so compassionate even in his own grief. I never questioned it. Why would I? Marcus was my only child, my good boy who'd chosen medicine just like me, who called every Sunday, who insisted on taking care of the funeral arrangements so I wouldn't have to bear that burden. I buried my sister, or so I thought, and tried to learn how to breathe in a world without her. Then my husband died. Heart attack. Sudden, final. And Marcus was there again, insisting I move in with him and Amina. "You've been through too much, Mom. Let us take care of you now." Their home was beautiful on the surface. A 2-story colonial in a quiet suburb, professionally decorated, everything in its place. But it felt wrong from day one. Cold. There were no family photos on the walls, no children's artwork on the refrigerator, no warmth in the carefully arranged throw pillows and matching curtains. It was a showroom, not a home. My grandchildren were strangers still. Malik, 8 years old, should have been loud, messy, full of boundless energy. Instead, he moved through the house like a ghost, speaking only when spoken to, his eyes always darting toward his parents before he answered any question. Sarah, 6, flinched whenever Amina raised her voice. She had nightmares every single night. I could hear her crying through the walls, but when I asked about them, she'd just shake her head and whisper, "I'm fine, Grandma." No laughter, no joy, just this oppressive silence that made my nursing instincts scream. I'd spent 40 years reading people, patients, parents, staff. I knew when something was being hidden. I knew the signs of fear, of secrets kept behind clenched teeth. But I told myself I was being paranoid. Grief does strange things to perception. Marcus and Amina both worked demanding nursing shifts. Maybe they were just tired. Maybe the children were shy. Maybe I was the problem, the grieving widow seeing shadows where there was only light. But then came the sounds. That mechanical humming at 4 a.m., the footsteps, the click of a lock, the smell of antiseptic rising through the heating vents, and one terrible morning, standing in that cold hallway with my eye pressed to a keyhole, I learned the truth. My son hadn't just lied about my sister's death. He'd orchestrated it, performed it, made me grieve a woman who was alive, suffering, imprisoned 15 feet beneath where I slept each night. The perfect lie, the perfect crime, the perfect son. Except he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd taught him everything he knew about medicine, and now I was going to teach him what happens when you betray the woman who gave you life. I forced myself to look through that keyhole for 10 full minutes, cataloging everything with the clinical precision of 4 decades in nursing. The hospital bed was a Stryker 3002, the same model we'd used in post-op recovery. Someone, Marcus, had positioned it in the center of the basement, surrounded by IV stands like sentries. The ventilator was older, probably stolen from hospital surplus, its rhythm steady but ominous in the silence. A pulse oximeter blinked red numbers on a monitor, 94% oxygen saturation, low but stable. Heart rate 58, blood pressure 110/70. Chem was alive. Medically speaking, she was doing fine. But my sister, the woman who'd taught me to braid my hair, who'd worked 3 jobs to pay for my nursing school, who'd danced at my wedding, was gone. In her place was a sedated shell, kept in pharmaceutical twilight, her body maintained like a machine instead of a human being. The IV bags told me the full horror. I could read the labels even through the keyhole. Lorazepam, 4 mg, midazolam, 10 mg, propofol drip running continuously. That was enough sedation to keep someone unconscious through major surgery. He wasn't just keeping her quiet. He was erasing her consciousness entirely, day after day, year after year. A clipboard hung on the bed rail. I could see Marcus's handwriting, that same neat print he'd used for birthday cards, documenting medication times with clinical efficiency. E400, increased propofol to 75 minutes. Patient remains unresponsive. Vitals stable. Patient. He called his aunt Patient. The feeding tube taped to her nose was crusted at the edges, unchanged for too long. Bed sores marked her shoulders and hips. Angry red wounds that should never exist with proper care, especially not under the watch of 2 trained nurses. The catheter bag hanging from the bed frame was half full of dark amber urine. Dehydration, neglect, criminal neglect. But her brain function, I could see it on the EEG monitor mounted on the wall. Theta waves, delta waves. She was sedated, not brain dead. If the drugs stopped, if someone weaned her properly, she could wake up. Kem could come back. My hands shook as I pulled the lockpick set from my bathrobe pocket, a gift from Jerry, the hospital security chief I'd worked with for 20 years. "Never know when you'll need to get into a locked medication cart," he'd joked when he taught me. The filing cabinet beside the bed surrendered in 30 seconds. Inside was the evidence of systematic evil. Power of attorney documents dated 5 years and 2 months ago, signed 3 days after the accident, when Kem would have still been in ICU, probably intubated, certainly not conscious enough to sign anything. Marcus's signature as witness. Amina's signature as notary. Both licenses that made them seem legitimate, trustworthy. Bank statements bound with rubber bands. I rifled through them with shaking fingers. Kem's pension, $4,200 deposited monthly like clockwork. 59 months of deposits, $252,000. All of it transferred to a joint account in Marcus and Amina's names within days of each payment. But there was more. Kem's savings account drained. The $180,000 she'd saved over 30 years of teaching, gone. Wire transfer to M. Chen and A. Chen for down payment residential property. They'd bought this house with money stolen from the woman locked in its basement. Credit cards opened in Kem's name, $45,000 in debt, designer handbags, luxury vacations, a BMW, all of it charged to a woman who couldn't consent, couldn't protest, couldn't even open her eyes. At the bottom of the drawer, I found the forged death certificate. Not the real one, that had never been filed with the county. This one was a crude fake, probably made on Marcus's home printer, just good enough to show nosy neighbors or concerned friends. Cause of death, traumatic brain injury. Date of death matching the accident. Signed by a Dr. R.E. Williams, whose signature was shaky, unconvincing. The real hospital transfer papers were there, too. Patient stable, transferred to family care for home hospice. Dr. Omar Kamar's signature at the bottom. My former supervisor, the man who'd written my recommendation letter for head nurse. He'd signed off on this, not knowing Marcus was planning a kidnapping, not a homecoming. I photographed everything with my phone, my hands steadier now that I was working, thinking, planning. This wasn't grief anymore. This was evidence collection. This was building a case. The ventilator hummed. Kem's chest rose and fell in mechanical rhythm. And upstairs, I heard the front door open. Marcus, home from his shift. I had 30 seconds to get out of the basement. I made it in 20. My heart was still hammering when I reached the top of the basement stairs, easing the door shut with a soft click just as Marcus's footsteps entered the kitchen. I pressed my back against the hallway wall, willing my breathing to slow, trying to look like a confused old woman who'd simply gotten up for water. But I wasn't alone in the hallway. Malik stood there in his Batman pajamas, his 8-year-old face far too serious for his age. His eyes met mine in the dim light, and I saw something that made my blood run cold. Recognition. "Grandma," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Did you see Aunt Chem?" The world tilted. I reached for the wall to steady myself. "What did you say, sweetheart?" He glanced toward the kitchen where Marcus was making coffee, then back to me. His whole body was trembling. "The lady in the basement." "Dad said her name is Kem. He said she's sick in the head and we can't tell anyone or she'll hurt people." "How long have you known?" My voice came out strangled. "Since we moved here, 2 years ago." Tears started sliding down his cheeks. "Mom said if we tell anyone at all, they'll take you away to a nursing home and we'll never see you again. She said it's Aunt Chem's fault that you're sad all the time, and if we love you, we have to keep her secret." I pulled him into my arms, feeling his small body shake with suppressed sobs. 2 years. These children had carried this horror for 2 years, terrorized into silence, weaponized against their own grandmother. Sarah appeared in her doorway, rubbing her eyes. She was 6 years old and looked even younger in her princess nightgown, her hair tangled from sleep. "Is Grandma going away?" Her voice cracked with fear. "No, baby, Grandma's not going anywhere." "But you saw her." Sarah's lip quivered. "You saw the lady. That means Mom will send you away now." I knelt down, gathering both children close. "Listen to me very carefully. Your Mom and Dad lied to you. That lady downstairs is my sister, your great-aunt Kem, and she's not dangerous. She's not sick in the head. She's hurt, and she needs help, and Grandma is going to help her. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Malik nodded against my shoulder. "I have nightmares about her," he whispered. "I dream she wakes up and she's mad at us for not helping her. I dream she's calling for help, but nobody can hear her," Sarah added, her voice small and broken. "I hear her in my sleep, Grandma. She says please over and over. The fury that rose in my chest was so intense I thought I might vomit. My son, my own son, had turned these innocent children into accomplices, had filled their heads with lies and threats, had given them nightmares about a woman who'd done nothing but love this family." Marcus called from the kitchen. "Mom, you up? Kids?" "Just getting water," I called back, forcing my voice to sound normal, sleepy. To the children, I mouthed, "Not one word." They understood. God help them, they'd gotten far too good at keeping secrets. I walked into the kitchen, playing the confused elderly widow. Couldn't sleep. The house settles strangely at night. Marcus smiled at me, that same warm smile I'd seen 1,000 times. "You should rest more, Mom. You look tired." He kissed my forehead like a dutiful son. And I had to fight every instinct not to recoil, because now I understood. I couldn't confront them. It was 2 against 1, and if they suspected I knew, they'd move Kem, destroy evidence, maybe even hurt the children to ensure their silence. I was a 70-year-old woman against 2 younger, stronger people who'd already proven they'd destroy anyone who threatened their scheme. I needed a different plan. Protect the children first. Document everything. Build an ironclad case. Then destroy them so completely they'd never hurt anyone again. I smiled back at my son. "You're right, dear. I'll go back to bed." But I wouldn't sleep. I'd be planning. Back in my bedroom, I locked the door and pulled out a notebook, my hands finally steady as I began to catalog my advantages. Marcus had made a critical mistake. He'd assumed his mother was just a helpless old widow, diminished by grief, easy to control. He'd forgotten who raised him. 40 years as a head nurse wasn't just medical knowledge, it was crisis management, evidence documentation, and understanding exactly how the legal system worked when patient abuse was involved. I'd testified in court 17 times as an expert witness. I knew medical kidnapping statutes by heart. I understood chain of evidence, mandatory reporting requirements, and how to build a case that would hold up under cross-examination. I had resources Marcus didn't know about. The $80,000 in my separate bank account, life insurance money from my husband that I'd never mentioned to anyone. Marcus assumed I was financially dependent on him. Wrong. More importantly, Kem had made me secondary on all her accounts 5 years before the accident. "Just in case something happens to me," she'd said, laughing, never imagining how prophetic that would be. I could access her financial records, see the theft in real time, and, if necessary, freeze everything with a single phone call. I'd also spent 15 years as the supervisor liaison to hospital security. Jerry hadn't just taught me lockpicking. He taught me surveillance, evidence photography, how to document without leaving traces, how to think like an investigator. The basement pattern was already clear. Marcus checked on Kem every night at 4 a.m. before his ICU shift started. Amina did afternoon checks at 2 p.m. before her night shift at a different hospital. That gave me a 3-hour window every morning when the house was completely empty except for the children and me. 3 hours to document, to photograph, to build my case. My medical knowledge was the real weapon. I recognized that drug cocktail, the lorazepam, midazolam, and propofol combination, and I knew exactly what it was doing to Kem's body: muscle atrophy, potential liver damage, memory impairment. But most importantly, I knew the timeline. If I could stop those drugs, if I could get her proper medical care, she could wake up. It would take weeks, maybe months of careful weaning, but her brain activity showed she was still there. Kem could testify. She could tell the world what Marcus had done. That made this more than elder abuse. This was kidnapping, false imprisonment, fraud, medical malpractice, multiple felonies, each carrying serious prison time. But I needed help. Dr. Omar Kamar's signature was on those transfer papers. He'd been deceived, too, and I knew Omar well enough to know he'd be furious when he learned the truth. He had resources I didn't: access to hospital records, connections to adult protective services, relationships with law enforcement. I also needed to secure the children. I couldn't execute this plan with Malik and Sarah in the house. If Marcus and Amina suspected anything, those kids would be in danger. I needed them somewhere safe, somewhere Marcus couldn't reach them before I made my move. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "Thanks for being here, Mom. Don't know what we'd do without you." I stared at that message, at the casual manipulation wrapped in false affection, and something hardened inside me. My son had miscalculated. He'd trapped a woman in his basement thinking she was powerless. He'd terrorized children. He'd stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars. He'd made me mourn my own sister while she lay suffering 15 feet below me. And now he was going to learn what happens when you underestimate a nurse with 40 years of experience and nothing left to lose. Let the planning begin. The morning after my discovery, I waited until Marcus's sedan disappeared down the street, followed 5 minutes later by Amina's silver BMW, the one purchased with Kem's stolen money. The children were still asleep. I had 3 hours. I called Dr. Omar Kamar from my car, parked 2 blocks away at a gas station. He answered on the second ring. "Jade, is everything all right?" "Omar, I need to meet with you immediately. It's about a patient transfer you signed off on 5 years ago. Kem Patterson." Silence. Then, "Your sister. Jade, I'm so sorry for your loss." "She's not dead, Omar. She's in my son's basement, alive, sedated, and I need your help to save her." 20 minutes later, I sat across from him in a diner booth, my phone on the table between us, swiping through the photos I'd taken through the keyhole. His face went from confusion to horror to fury in the span of 30 seconds. Jesus Christ. His hands shook as he zoomed in on the medication log. That's enough sedation to keep someone unconscious indefinitely, I know. I've been checking doses for 40 years. Omar looked up at me, his dark eyes sharp with the intelligence that had made him the youngest hospital administrator in the state. "Your son did this, Marcus." "Him and his wife. They've been collecting her pension for 5 years, over $250,000 stolen, plus her life savings. I have bank statements, forged documents, everything." He pulled out his tablet, his fingers flying across the screen. "I'm accessing the hospital records now. Patterson Kem, admitted 5 years ago, traumatic brain injury from motor vehicle accident." He scrolled, reading. Initial prognosis was guarded, but Jade, she was stabilizing. We had her scheduled for rehabilitation evaluation. The neurologist gave her a 70% chance of meaningful recovery. But Marcus requested the transfer. Home hospice care. He said the family wanted her comfortable in her final days. Omar's voice was tight with rage. "I signed off on it because I trusted him. He was an ICU nurse. He had power of attorney. And I thought—" He slammed his fist on the table, making coffee cups rattle. "I helped him kidnap her. You didn't know, but now you do, and I need your resources." Omar was already making a list on his tablet. I have contacts at Adult Protective Services. My college roommate is in the FBI Financial Crimes Unit, and I can pull Marcus's complete employee records. There have been complaints, Jade. Rough handling of patients, medication errors that got swept under the rug because he's good at talking his way out of trouble. Like he talked you into signing those transfer papers. Exactly like that. He looked at me across the table, and I saw the same determination I'd seen 20 years ago when we'd fought the hospital board to improve staffing ratios. What do you need from me? Everything. But we have to be strategic. If Marcus suspects anything, he'll move her, destroy evidence, maybe hurt the children. I need to build a case so ironclad that he can't wriggle out of it. Document everything, secure all the evidence, protect the kids, and then, only then, do we bring down the hammer. Agreed, but Jade, this isn't just elder abuse. This is kidnapping, fraud, medical malpractice, falsifying government documents. We're talking about multiple felonies. Good. I want him to spend decades in prison thinking about what he did. Omar's expression shifted to something like awe. You've changed since Gerald died. You're harder. No, I'm done being soft. My sister has been tortured for 5 years while I grieved over an empty coffin. My grandchildren have been terrorized into silence. My son has stolen, lied, and destroyed lives for money. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. I'm not hard, Omar. I'm surgical, and I'm going to cut this cancer out of my family with precision. He nodded slowly. What's the first move? Get the children somewhere safe. I can't execute this plan with them in that house. Then freeze the money trail. Make Marcus panic. Make him sloppy. Build the medical case showing criminal neglect. Get APS involved so there's official documentation. And most importantly, keep Kem alive until we can rescue her properly. When do we start? We already have. Those photos are time-stamped. My testimony as a medical professional carries weight. Your signature on the transfer papers means you're a victim too. You'll testify about how you were deceived. Every piece of evidence I gather from here on out follows proper chain of custody. Omar pulled out his phone. I'll call my APS contact today, get an investigation started, and I'll reach out to the FBI about the financial fraud. He paused. Jade, when this comes out, it's going to be ugly. The media will eat this alive. Are you prepared for that? I'm a 70-year-old woman who discovered her supposedly dead sister being kept as a cash cow in her son's basement. Let the media come. Let them see what happens when you underestimate a nurse with 4 decades of experience and a sister to save. His smile was grim. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Too late for Marcus to learn that lesson, but he will. I couldn't leave Malik and Sarah in that house. If Marcus and Amina suspected I knew their secret, those children would become leverage, hostages, or worse, witnesses to be silenced. I'd seen enough in my nursing career to know that people capable of torturing an elderly woman were capable of anything. The trick was making their removal look natural, harmless, even welcome. That evening, I played the enthusiastic grandmother at dinner. I've been thinking, I said, passing the mashed potatoes Marcus didn't know were made with Kem's pension money. The kids have been so good lately. How about I take them on a little adventure? The children's museum, maybe the zoo, perhaps a few days at my friend Carol's lake house. Amina's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. A trip. Just a week. Get them out of your hair, let you two relax. I smiled at Marcus. You both work so hard. You deserve a break. Marcus exchanged a glance with Amina. I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. Were the children safer here where he could monitor them? Or was it better to have them gone while whatever was happening with the frozen accounts got sorted out? I don't know, Mom. That's a lot of responsibility for you. I played my trump card. Helpless elderly confusion. Oh, I can still manage 2 small children for a few days, unless you think I'm too old. I let my voice quaver just slightly. I suppose you're right. I'm not as capable as I used to be. No, it's not that. Marcus reached across and patted my hand, the liar's touch I'd once found comforting. "I just worry about you. But if you really want to—" "The kids would love it," I pressed. "Wouldn't you, Malik?" Malik looked at his father, then at me, understanding something shifting in his 8-year-old eyes. "Yes, Grandma." Amina leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Make sure they don't talk to strangers about family business. You know how kids are. They exaggerate, make up stories." "Of course, dear. They'll be with me the whole time." The next morning, I packed their bags while Amina hovered in the doorway, her arms crossed. "Remember what we talked about," she said to the children. "Grandma's old. She forgets things. If anyone asks about home, you tell them everything's perfect." Sarah nodded, her little face solemn. Malik just stared at his mother with an expression that looked far too adult for his age. I drove them away from that house, watching it disappear in the rearview mirror. Neither child spoke until we were on the highway. "We're not going to a lake house, are we?" Malik asked quietly. "No, sweetheart. We're going somewhere safe. Are you going to help Aunt Chem?" "Yes." "Good." He looked out the window. "Mom and Dad are bad people." Sarah started crying. "Are we bad too, for not telling?" I pulled over at a rest stop and held them both while they sobbed. "You are not bad. You were threatened by adults who were supposed to protect you. That's not your fault. None of this is your fault." Dr. Kamar's sister, Layla, lived 3 hours north in a sprawling farmhouse surrounded by apple trees. She was a family law attorney who'd helped me arrange everything via encrypted email. When we arrived, she greeted the children with warm cookies and gentle questions. In her office, with a child psychologist named Dr. Rebecca Torres present, Malik and Sarah told their story. Dr. Torres recorded everything, the threats, the nightmares, Marcus's lies about Kem being sick in the head, Amina's warnings about nursing homes, every word documented, time-stamped, admissible in court. Dr. Torres took photos of Sarah's stress rash, covering her arms like angry red lace, Malik's fingernails bitten down to the quick, physical manifestations of psychological abuse. "These children have been living in a state of chronic fear," Dr. Torres told me afterward, her voice professionally neutral, but her eyes furious. "The trauma from being forced to keep secrets this significant will require extensive therapy." "Will they testify if needed?" "I'd prefer not to traumatize them further, but their recorded statements and my evaluation should be sufficient. They're clear, consistent, and devastatingly credible." Layla handed me a flash drive. "Everything's encrypted. Multiple copies stored in different locations. Marcus and Amina have no idea the children are here. I'm not on any public records connected to Omar. They're safe, Jade." I knelt down to say goodbye to Malik and Sarah. "I have to go back now, but I promise you I will fix this. And when I come back, I'm bringing Aunt Chem with me." "Will we have to see Mom and Dad again?" Sarah whispered. "Not if you don't want to. Not ever again." The drive back was shorter than I remembered. I walked into Marcus and Amina's house that evening and found them in the living room, watching television without really seeing it. "They're having such a wonderful time," I announced cheerfully. "Carol said they can stay a few extra days. I hope that's all right." Marcus's relief was palpable. "That's fine, Mom. Great, actually. Gives us time to deal with some financial issues we're having." "Oh? Nothing serious, I hope." "Bank error. It'll be sorted out soon." I smiled at my son, the man I'd raised, the man who'd become a monster. "I'm sure it will be, dear." That night, lying in my bed, I thought about the flash drive in my pocket. 2 children's testimony, medical evaluation, photos of abuse, all secured, all protected, all building toward the moment when Marcus would realize exactly what he'd unleashed. Small victory. The children were safe. The evidence was growing, and Marcus had no idea the walls were already closing in. At 6 a.m. the next morning, while Marcus snored in his bedroom and Amina worked her night shift, I sat at my laptop in the kitchen and accessed Kem's bank accounts. The secondary authorization she'd given me years ago, just in case something happens, was still active. Marcus had never thought to check, assuming his helpless mother wouldn't know how to navigate online banking. Wrong again. I downloaded 5 years of statements, watching the theft unfold in neat columns of numbers. Every month, like clockwork. $4,200 pension deposit, followed within 3 days by a transfer to M. Chen and A. Chen joint account. 59 months of theft. I did the math twice to be sure. $247,800 stolen from pension alone. But that was just the beginning. Kim's savings account told a darker story. 5 years ago, it held $180,000, her lifetime of careful saving as a 4th-grade teacher, putting away a little each month for retirement she'd never get to enjoy. 3 weeks after the accident, a wire transfer drained it completely. The memo line read, "Down payment 2847 Oakwood Drive." The address made my stomach turn. That was this house. Marcus and Amina had bought their perfect suburban home with money stolen from the woman they'd imprisoned in its basement. I kept digging. Credit cards opened in Kim's name, all with Marcus listed as authorized user. $45,000 in debt across 4 cards. The statements read like a catalog of greed. Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, luxury hotels in Cancun, payments to BMW of North County. They'd renovated the entire upstairs last year. New hardwood floors, designer lighting, a bathroom that cost $30,000. All of it charged to credit cards in a comatose woman's name while she lay in the basement developing bed sores from neglect. Tax returns were next. I found them in Marcus's email. He'd never been good with passwords, still using Marcus 1985 for everything. 5 years of returns claiming Kim as a dependent, collecting tax credits for her care, deducting medical expenses they never actually provided. Federal tax fraud. That would get the IRS involved. The life insurance policy was the final grotesque detail. Marcus had taken out a $500,000 policy on Kim 3 months after her accident, listing himself as sole beneficiary. The monthly premiums were paid automatically from Kim's pension account. She was literally paying for her own death benefit. I screenshot everything, downloading files to an encrypted drive Dr. Kamar had provided. Then I made my move. Using my secondary account authorization, I froze every single one of Kim's accounts. Checking, savings, credit cards, all locked with fraud alerts. I contacted the credit card companies, reporting identity theft. I called the life insurance company from a burner phone, leaving an anonymous tip about a policyholder being held against her will. Then I waited. Marcus came home at 4:30 p.m., and I heard him go straight to the basement. His routine check, making sure his cash cow was still sedated, still compliant, still profitable. 20 minutes later, he came upstairs, and I could hear him in the home office, probably checking accounts before dinner. The explosion came at 5:15 p.m. "What the hell?" His voice carried through the house. "Amina! Amina!" She'd just woken up for her night shift, stumbling out of the bedroom in her scrubs. What's wrong?" "The accounts are frozen, all of them. Checking, savings, the credit cards, everything." I stayed in the kitchen, stirring soup on the stove, listening to their panic with grim satisfaction. "That's impossible. Did you check the balance?" "I can't access anything. It says there's a fraud alert on the account, and I need to contact customer service with photo ID. Call them right now." I walked into the hallway, playing confused grandmother. "Is everything all right? You both sound upset." Marcus was on his phone, his face red. "Bank error, Mom. Just give us a minute." I watched him try to navigate the automated system, getting more frustrated with each transfer to a new department. Finally, a real person answered. "Yes, this is Marcus Chen. There's some kind of error on my aunt's account." "What?" "No, I have power of attorney. I'm authorized to—" "Hold on, fraud investigation? There's no fraud. This is a mistake." His eyes darted to Amina. "What do you mean, elder abuse hotline? This is ridiculous. My aunt is... She's deceased. She died years ago." I saw his mistake the moment he made it. He just told a bank representative that the account holder was dead, while simultaneously trying to maintain access to active accounts. "Sir, if the account holder is deceased, you'll need to provide a death certificate and—" "No, wait, don't hang up." But he did. Marcus threw his phone onto the couch, his hands shaking. They flagged the accounts for elder abuse investigation. Someone reported fraud. Amina's eyes snapped to me. "Did you talk to anyone, old woman?" I blinked innocently. "Talk to whom, dear? About what?" "About family business, about anything." "I don't understand. You're both so upset about a bank error. Can't you just go to the branch in the morning and sort it out?" Marcus sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. "We can't access any of the money. The mortgage payment is due in 3 days, the car payment, the credit cards." "Surely you have savings." The look he gave me was almost comical. They had no savings. They'd been living month to month on stolen pension payments, spending every dollar as fast as it came in, confident the gravy train would never stop. I went back to the kitchen, ladling soup into bowls while they frantically called credit card companies, getting the same response every time: accounts frozen pending fraud investigation. That night, I heard Amina screaming into her phone. "What do you mean the life insurance policy is under review? We've been paying premiums for 5 years." Marcus paced the living room until 2 a.m., his voice a low, angry murmur as he called their bank again and again, getting nowhere. And downstairs, Kem lay unconscious, unaware that her stolen money had just stopped flowing, unaware that the walls were beginning to crumble around her captors. Dramatic irony at its finest. They thought this was a bank glitch, random bad luck, bureaucratic incompetence. They had no idea their mother had orchestrated every single frozen account, every fraud alert, every investigation. Let them panic. This was just the beginning. For the next 5 nights, I became a ghost in my son's house. At midnight, when Marcus was at work and Amina slept soundly before her shift, I crept down to the basement with my lockpick set and documented everything. Night 1. Full photographic survey. I used Jerry's old technique. Ruler placed beside every injury for scale, multiple angles, proper lighting from my phone's flash. The bed sores were stage 3. Deep tissue damage that looked like angry craters in Kem's shoulders and hips. Criminal neglect. Any nurse who saw these photos would know immediately that proper care hadn't been provided in months, possibly years. Night 2. Video documentation. I recorded the IV setup, zooming in on medication labels, showing the excessive doses. 3 times the safe amount of benzodiazepines. I filmed the ventilator settings, the feeding tube crusted with old formula, the catheter bag that should have been changed yesterday. My voice, barely a whisper, provided medical commentary. Note the skin breakdown consistent with patient positioning, unchanged for extended periods. Note the medication dosages that exceed standard of care by 300%. Night 3. Kem's vital signs. I used the monitoring equipment Marcus had stolen from the hospital, recording everything on my phone. Heart rate stable. Blood pressure good. Oxygen saturation at 95%. Brain activity on the EEG showing theta waves. Sedation, not brain death. I downloaded the week's worth of data from the monitors onto my encrypted drive, showing a clear pattern of medically unnecessary sedation maintained for years. Night 4. The medication log. I photographed every page of Marcus's clipboard, his handwriting documenting 5 years of pharmaceutical torture. The doses increased whenever Kem showed signs of movement. The notes cold, clinical. Patient attempted to open eyes. Increased propofol to 100 mg calcicida min. Patient now unresponsive. My hands shook with fury as I read. She'd tried to wake up multiple times, and each time Marcus had increased the drugs, pushing her deeper into unconsciousness. Night 5. I made my mistake. I was photographing the filing cabinet documents again, wanting fresh copies with better lighting, when I heard the front door open. Marcus, home 2 hours early. My heart stopped. I had maybe 30 seconds before he came down to do his check. I killed my phone's flashlight, shoved it in my pocket, and looked frantically for somewhere to hide. The basement was wide open, just medical equipment, the filing cabinet, and Kem's bed. The laundry room, a small closet off the basement filled with boxes and old furniture. I squeezed inside, pulling the door nearly closed, leaving just a crack to peer through. Marcus's footsteps on the basement stairs, heavy, tired. Then his voice, and I realized he was on the phone. "I'm telling you, something's wrong with her. She moved her hand yesterday. I saw her fingers twitch." Pause. "Amina, calm down. I increased the dose immediately, but what if she's building tolerance? We've been giving her the same cocktail for 5 years. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle any sound, barely breathing. We can't exactly take her to a doctor, can we? Marcus's laugh was bitter. "No, listen to me. We need to increase the sedation again. Keep her under until Mom dies naturally. She's 70. It can't be that much longer. Then we say Kem died too, file the real death certificate, collect the life insurance, and this is all over." My blood turned to ice. What if someone finds out? Amina's voice, tinny through the phone speaker. "We should just, overdose her. Make it look like her heart finally gave out." Too risky. There'd be an autopsy, questions. No, we keep her sedated, keep Mom docile and wait. Once Mom's dead, there's no one left who remembers Kem clearly enough to identify her. We'll cremate the body immediately. They were planning to kill Kem when I died. Not murder, exactly. Just wait for nature to take its course with me, then finish the job they'd started 5 years ago. I fumbled for my phone, hitting record. Every word captured. Marcus hung up and did his check, adjusting IV lines, recording vitals, increasing the propofol drip just as he'd discussed. Then he went back upstairs, and I was alone with my sister and my fury. I waited 20 minutes to be sure he wouldn't come back, then crept out of the laundry room. Kem lay exactly as she had, trapped in pharmaceutical twilight, unaware that her nephew had just casually discussed letting her die. I touched her hand, cold, thin, the bones too prominent. "I'm getting you out," I whispered. "I promise you, Kem, I'm getting you out, and I'm destroying them." The next morning, I met Dr. Kamar at the diner again. I showed him everything, the photos, videos, medical records, and most damning of all, the recording of Marcus's phone call. Omar's face went white. "This is conspiracy to commit murder. Can you transcribe it? Get it properly documented?" "Already on it. I'll send copies to my FBI contact, to APS, and to the district attorney's office." He looked up at me. "Jade, we have enough now. We can move today. Get a warrant, rescue Kem, arrest them both." "Not yet. The children are safe. Kem is stable. I want to build this so completely that they can't breathe, let alone escape. Medical board case, criminal charges, civil lawsuit, everything. You want them to suffer. I want them to lose everything they stole, every bit of freedom, every shred of reputation. I want them to spend decades in prison knowing that the helpless old woman they underestimated destroyed them completely." Omar nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure we get every single charge to stick." The Adult Protective Services investigation began with a routine visit. I'd called the hotline 3 days earlier from a burner phone, providing Kem's name, Marcus's address, and just enough information to trigger a mandatory wellness check. The social worker, Patricia Mendez, arrived on a Tuesday afternoon when I'd made sure to be out running errands. I wanted Marcus and Amina to handle this alone. Wanted to see them lie to an official investigator without me there to maintain their facade. I got home an hour after she left and found them in the kitchen, both pale and shaking. "Everything all right?" I asked, setting down grocery bags. "Fine," Marcus said too quickly. "Just some bureaucrat checking on Aunt Kem." My heart raced, but I kept my voice casual. "Checking on her? But sweetheart, Kem died 5 years ago." Exactly what I told her. Some kind of database error. They had her listed as receiving home hospice care at this address. How strange. What did she say? Amina jumped in, her voice sharp. She wanted to see medical records, death certificate. We told her the records were in storage. She stared at me. Did you talk to anyone about family business? I arranged groceries in the refrigerator with shaking hands that I made sure they could see, playing the nervous old woman. Talk to whom, dear? About what? You know I don't really talk to anyone these days. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Mom, if you said something to someone, even accidentally, I don't understand why you're both so angry with me. I let my voice crack. I haven't done anything. I'm just trying to help, living here, trying not to be a burden. The guilt trip worked. Marcus's expression softened. Sorry, Mom, we're just stressed with money problems. The social worker said she'd be back next week with her supervisor. We need to make sure we have our story straight. But Patricia Mendez had already noted the discrepancies in her report. I knew because Dr. Kamar's contact at APS called him that evening with the details. Medical equipment visible through basement window, fresh medical waste in garbage bins, power bills suggesting heavy electricity use consistent with running medical devices. Marcus and Amina's claim that the patient died months ago didn't match the evidence. A follow-up visit was scheduled, with police presence. The next day, Marcus cornered me in the hallway. Mom, did you take the kids anywhere special? Anyone they might have talked to? Just the lake house, dear. They played with Carol's grandchildren. Did they mention anything about home? About the basement? Why would they mention the basement? There's nothing in the basement except storage and the water heater. I tilted my head, playing confused. Is there something in the basement I should know about? I watched him wrestle with it. Tell me the truth or maintain the lie. The lie won. No, Mom, nothing. I just worry about what kids say to strangers. That afternoon, I met with my attorney, Elizabeth Shaw, a fierce woman in her 60s who'd helped me draft my will years ago. Now she was helping me with something else entirely. We're filing for a competency evaluation, she explained. You're establishing legal documentation that you're mentally sound, capable of making decisions, and not under any coercion. Why? Because when this breaks, Marcus and Amina will claim you're senile, confused, that you fabricated this entire story. We're cutting that defense off at the knees. She slid papers across her desk. I'm also filing a restraining order based on Amina's verbal threats. If you ruin this, old woman, was witnessed by the children and recorded in their testimony. That's a threat. Won't that tip them off? Not until the order is served, which will be the same day APS returns with a warrant. Everything was falling into place. The psychological evaluation confirmed what I already knew. I was completely competent, with perfect recall and no signs of cognitive decline. The restraining order was approved. Dr. Kamar's FBI contact had begun an official financial investigation into the pension fraud. The IRS had flagged Marcus and Amina's tax returns for audit. Meanwhile, their world was crumbling. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter, mortgage payment late, car payment overdue, credit cards and collections. Marcus was suspended from the hospital pending investigation into complaints about his patient care. Amina had been pulled into HR for concerning behavior at work. I watched it all with grim satisfaction, playing the supportive mother. Oh dear, suspended? I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Maybe you should have saved more money for emergencies. The pressure was building. I could see it in how they looked at each other. Accusations unspoken but brewing. Whose fault was this? Who'd been too greedy, too careless? One evening, I overheard them in their bedroom. We need to move her, Amina said. Get her somewhere else before that social worker comes back. Move her where? We can't exactly rent a storage unit for a comatose person. I don't care. Your mother knows something. I can see it in her eyes. And those frozen accounts, that's not coincidence. Mom's 70 years old. She doesn't even know how to use online banking. Wrong again, son. They tried anyway. 2 days before the scheduled APS follow-up, they rented a medical transport van. I knew because Dr. Kamar's contact at the rental company, we'd called every medical transport service in the county, had been briefed to report any suspicious rentals. The police received an anonymous tip about a vulnerable adult being moved without proper authorization. The van rental company reported the suspicious activity. Adult Protective Services filed for an emergency warrant. The trap was set, every piece in place. The FBI investigating financial crimes, the IRS auditing tax fraud, APS building an elder abuse case, the medical board reviewing Marcus's license, the district attorney's office waiting with criminal charges. All of them circling my son and his wife like sharks drawn to blood in the water. And Marcus and Amina still thought this was just bad luck, just a series of unfortunate coincidences, just bureaucratic hassles that would eventually clear up. They had no idea their mother had orchestrated every single investigation, every frozen account, every official inquiry. The walls weren't just closing in anymore. They were about to collapse entirely. Week 3 of my campaign, and Marcus looked like he'd aged 10 years. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His hands shook when he poured coffee. He'd stopped going to the basement at 4 a.m., too exhausted, too defeated. Amina did the checks now, her face tight with barely controlled panic. The bills had metastasized across the kitchen counter like a cancer. Red envelopes, final notices, threatening letters from collection agencies. The mortgage company had sent a foreclosure warning. The BMW was days away from repossession. I made breakfast, scrambling eggs while they hunched over their phones, desperately trying to find money that no longer existed. "Oh dear, are you having financial trouble?" I asked with perfect innocence. Marcus's head snapped up. "We're fine, Mom." "It's just that I noticed all those red envelopes. I hope everything's all right. It's temporary, just a cash flow issue." I buttered toast, letting the silence hang, then gently, "You know, maybe if you'd saved more instead of taking those expensive vacations and buying luxury cars, you'd have a cushion for emergencies. That's what your father and I always did. Lived below our means, saved for rainy days." Amina's fork clattered against her plate. "We don't need financial advice from someone on a fixed income." "Of course not, dear. I'm just concerned." "Well, don't be." She stood abruptly. "Where are the kids, anyway? When are they coming home?" "Soon. Carol's grandchildren are having such fun with them." "It's been 3 weeks, Jade." I noticed she'd stopped calling me Mom. "Good." The mask was slipping. "Children need stability," Amina continued. "They need to be home, with their family. I'll bring them back when I'm ready." I met her eyes, letting her see something harder than she expected. "Unless you'd like to drive up and get them yourself, I can give you Carol's address." Marcus put his hand on Amina's arm. "Mom's right. Let the kids enjoy their vacation. We have enough to deal with right now." That afternoon, I came home from grocery shopping to find them both in the living room with a lawyer, a thin man in an expensive suit who looked deeply uncomfortable. "Mrs. Chen," he said, standing when I entered, "I'm Jeffrey Rothman. Your son and daughter-in-law have retained me regarding some legal matters." "How nice. I hope you can help them with their financial troubles." His expression suggested otherwise. "I need to be frank with you both," he said to Marcus and Amina. "You're facing multiple investigations: IRS, FBI financial crimes, Adult Protective Services, and the medical board. That's an extremely serious situation." "It's all a misunderstanding," Marcus insisted. "Some kind of identity theft, database errors." "Mr. Chen, the IRS doesn't flag accounts for database errors. The FBI doesn't investigate identity theft without evidence of criminal activity, and APS doesn't schedule emergency welfare checks because of paperwork mistakes." Rothman pulled out his tablet. "I've reviewed what public records I can access. Your aunt's accounts showing years of pension deposits, but no corresponding expenses for her care. Tax returns claiming dependents who are allegedly deceased. Life insurance policies on individuals whose death certificates you can't produce." Amina's face went white. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need a criminal defense attorney, not a general practice lawyer. I can't represent you in this matter. It's too far outside my expertise, and frankly," he closed his tablet, "I have ethical concerns about the case." After he left, I heard them screaming at each other in their bedroom. "This is your fault. You said it was foolproof." "My fault? You're the one who insisted on buying a BMW, on those trips to Cancun. We needed to live normally. We couldn't act suspicious. Well, congratulations, we acted so normal that we're about to lose everything. I made dinner, roast chicken, Kem's recipe, and called them down to eat. They sat across from me, barely touching their food. "Where's the medical transport van?" I asked casually. Marcus's fork froze. "What van?" "The one you rented 2 days ago. I saw the charge on the credit card statement that came today. You know, the one that's now in collections." "How do you know about that?" I smiled. "Dear, the mail still comes to this house. I can't help but see the envelopes." The truth was more complicated. Dr. Wani Kumar had copies of all their financial records thanks to the FBI investigation, but they didn't need to know that. "The van rental fell through," Amina said tightly. "Another database error." "You seem to be having quite a few of those lately. Database errors, frozen accounts, suspended licenses, investigations." I took a bite of chicken. "It's almost like someone is working systematically to destroy your life." They stared at me. "But that's silly, isn't it?" I continued. "Who would have the resources, knowledge, and motivation to orchestrate something like that? Certainly not a 70-year-old widow living on a fixed income." Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his face went gray. "The hospital just terminated my employment. For cause." "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." I wasn't. "What will you do for health insurance?" "That's what you're worried about? Health insurance?" "Well, yes, you'll need coverage. Unless—" I paused. "Unless you were planning to just take someone else's benefits, use their identity, collect their income while they're unable to protest." The silence was deafening. Amina pushed back from the table. "I'm going to check the basement." "Good idea," I said. "Make sure everything's still in order down there. You wouldn't want someone to discover what you're keeping in storage." After she left, Marcus leaned forward. "Mom, what do you know?" "Know about what, dear?" "Don't play games with me. You've been different ever since you moved in. The way you look at us, the things you say. It's like..." "Like what?" "Like you're playing chess and we're just figuring out we're not players. We're pieces." I smiled at my son, the boy I'd raised, the man who'd become a monster. "Chess requires strategy, sweetheart. It requires thinking several moves ahead. It requires understanding your opponent's weaknesses and exploiting them systematically." I stood, collecting plates. "But I'm just a confused old woman with memory problems. What would I know about strategy?" The doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see 2 police cars in the driveway, officers approaching the door. A woman in a blazer, Patricia Mendez from APS, with paperwork in her hand. Marcus saw them too. His face went from gray to white. "Mom, what did you do?" I walked to the door and opened it before he could stop me. "Mrs. Chen?" Officer Rodriguez asked. "We have a warrant to perform a welfare check on a patient allegedly receiving care at this address." "Of course, officer. Please come in." I stepped aside, watching Marcus and Amina freeze in the hallway like deer in headlights. "I believe what you're looking for is in the basement." Marcus's phone rang as the police moved toward the basement door. He looked at the screen, then at me, his expression somewhere between betrayal and disbelief. "It's you," he said quietly. "You called them." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth was written all over his face as he finally understood what I'd done. He answered the phone, his voice cracking. "Hello?" A pause, then panic. "No, wait. You need to tell them there's nothing in the basement. You need to..." I walked over and took the phone from his hand. He was calling me. My cell phone, upstairs in my room, which I'd set to forward to my current phone, giving him the illusion of reaching out while I stood right in front of him. "But honey," I said softly, "there is something in the basement. There's your aunt who's been dead for 5 years. Except she's not dead, is she?" His mouth opened. No sound came out. "Marcus," I continued, my voice steady, surgical, "what did you do?" The basement door crashed open. I heard Officer Rodriguez call out, "Medic, we need medics now." Patricia Mendez rushed past us. More officers poured in. Then the paramedics, carrying equipment, moving with the urgent efficiency I remembered from my nursing days. "Ma'am, you need to step back," an officer told me. I moved to the stairs where I could see everything. Kem on the bed, suddenly surrounded by people who actually wanted to save her. Paramedics checking vitals, calling out numbers, preparing to transport. Patricia photographing everything with grim determination. Officers marking evidence, logging the medication bottles, the logs, the filing cabinet full of fraud. And then the detective, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, reading from a paper in her hand. "Marcus Chen and Amina Chen, you're under arrest for elder abuse, kidnapping, fraud, falsifying a death certificate, medical malpractice, and conspiracy to commit murder." Murder. That last word made Amina scream. "That's insane. We didn't murder anyone. She's alive." "You're on tape discussing letting her die when the witness who could identify her died naturally," the detective said calmly. "That's conspiracy to commit murder through neglect." Marcus turned to me, his eyes wild. "Mom, please, you don't understand. We were going to use the money to give the kids a better life. Private schools, college funds. Don't." My voice cut through his excuses like a scalpel. "Don't you dare use those children to justify torturing my sister. You terrorized Malik and Sarah into silence. You gave them nightmares. You turned them into accomplices. Where are they?" Amina demanded. "Where are our children?" "Safe. Somewhere you'll never reach them. Somewhere they're learning that family doesn't mean covering up crimes." Officers pulled out handcuffs. Marcus tried to back away. "Mom, please, we're your family." "Family doesn't torture the helpless." I watched them cuff his hands behind his back. "Family doesn't steal from the vulnerable. Family doesn't turn children into frightened secrets keepers." "You set us up!" Amina screamed as they cuffed her. "You manipulated everything. You're just a bitter old woman who—" "I'm a nurse with 40 years of experience," I interrupted. "I'm a sister who loved her family, and I'm a grandmother who protected 2 children from their parents' evil." I stepped closer, looking her directly in the eyes. "I didn't set you up, Amina. I simply documented what you'd already done." The paramedics wheeled Kem out on a gurney. She looked so small, so fragile. I touched her hand as they passed. "I'm here, Kem," I whispered. "I've got you now." Detective Morrison approached me. "Mrs. Chen will need your statement." "I have documentation, photos, videos, recordings, financial records. 5 years of evidence." I pulled the encrypted flash drive from my pocket. "Everything you need." "You've been investigating this yourself?" "I'm a registered nurse. I recognized medical abuse when I saw it." I glanced at Marcus being led out in handcuffs, and I knew exactly how to build a case that would hold up in court. "Why didn't you call us immediately?" "Because I needed ironclad evidence. Because I needed to protect 2 children first. And because—" I watched through the window as they loaded Marcus into a police car. I needed him to know it was me. I needed him to understand that the helpless old woman he'd manipulated, the grieving mother he'd lied to, the confused elderly person he'd dismissed. I needed him to know she destroyed him. Detective Morrison studied me for a long moment. "That's cold. No, Detective. That's justice." The media arrived within the hour. Someone had been monitoring police scanners. News vans lined the street. Reporters shouted questions as officers loaded evidence boxes into trucks. I stood on the porch, watching it all unfold. Dr. Kamar pulled up, running to me. "Jade, are you all right?" "I'm fine. Kem's on her way to St. Mary's ICU. Can you oversee her care?" "Already on it. I called ahead. They're preparing for sedation withdrawal protocol." He squeezed my hand. "You did it." "We're not done yet. This is just the arrest. The trial comes next." A reporter broke through the police line. "Mrs. Chen, is it true you discovered your sister alive in your son's basement?" I looked at the camera, thinking about all the other elderly people suffering in silence, all the families hiding abuse behind closed doors. "Yes. My sister Kem was supposedly dead for 5 years. My son kept her sedated, stole her money, and planned to let her die." I let that sink in. If you suspect elder abuse, call the authorities. Document everything. Trust your instincts. I paused. And never underestimate a nurse. The flash of cameras lit up the evening. Behind me, in Marcus's perfect house bought with stolen money, the lights blazed as police continued their investigation. My son was gone, my sister was saved, and the real work, the trial, the recovery, the healing, was just beginning. By morning, we were national news. Retired nurse discovers sister alive after 5 years, ran on every major outlet. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all of them running the same story with varying degrees of sensationalism. The local channels camped outside Marcus and Amina's house. Their house. I had to remind myself, not mine anymore. I checked into a hotel that night, refusing to spend another moment under that roof. Dr. Kamar helped me prepare a statement. We sat in the hotel conference room, surrounded by notes and evidence files, crafting words that would shape the narrative. You need to humanize Kem, he advised. Right now, she's just the victim. People need to understand who she was before this happened. So I told her story. To reporters, to cameras, to anyone who would listen. I showed them photos of Kem as a vibrant woman, teaching her 4th grade class, laughing at family picnics, holding baby Marcus in her arms. She raised me after our parents died, I explained to a journalist from the Washington Post. She was 21 years old, barely an adult herself, but she dropped out of nursing school to keep us together. She worked 3 jobs. She sacrificed everything so I could have the education she never finished. The photo they published showed Kem at my nursing school graduation, beaming with pride. The caption read, "The sister who gave up everything, kept alive only to be robbed of everything." Social media exploded. Within 48 hours, someone had found Marcus and Amina's Facebook accounts. Screenshots went viral. Vacation photos from Cancun, designer shopping bags, the BMW parked in front of their expensive house. All posted while Kem lay sedated in the basement. One post from Amina, dated 6 months earlier. "Blessed to support our elderly family members. Family comes first," with photos of them at a spa resort. The comment section became a digital pillory. They were at a spa while keeping his aunt in a basement? The audacity to post about family values while literally torturing a family member. I hope they rot in prison. The community reaction was swift and brutal. Marcus's hospital colleagues were interviewed, carefully dancing around HIPAA laws but making their disgust clear. We had concerns about his patient care, one nurse told a local station. Rough handling, medication errors, but he was charming, always had explanations. A neighbor I'd never spoken to gave an interview. We heard strange noises from the basement, like medical equipment humming. When I mentioned it to Amina Chen, she threatened to sue me for harassment, said I was a nosy busybody making up stories. That interview went viral. Woman threatened for reporting suspected abuse, became its own news cycle. Patricia Mendez from APS held a press conference, her face grim. This case represents a catastrophic failure of multiple systems. A vulnerable adult was removed from hospital care under false pretenses. For 5 years, she existed in bureaucratic limbo, not officially dead, not officially alive, invisible to every safety net designed to protect people like her. The questions came fast. How could this happen? Where was the oversight? Who else could be suffering like this? Patricia didn't flinch. We're reviewing our protocols, but I want to emphasize, Mrs. Jade Chen is the hero of this story, a 70-year-old woman who trusted her instincts, documented everything, and built an ironclad case before coming to authorities. She did what our entire system failed to do. I watched that press conference from my hotel room, tears streaming down my face. Hero. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a sister who'd failed to protect someone for 5 years. The legal machinery ground forward. Marcus and Amina's bail hearing made headlines when the judge denied bail entirely. Flight risk, Judge Patricia Coleman stated firmly. Danger to witnesses. And frankly, the depravity of these alleged crimes suggests these defendants pose an ongoing threat to vulnerable populations. Their lawyer, a public defender now since Jeffrey Rothman had dropped them, tried to argue, "Your Honor, my clients are medical professionals with no prior criminal history." "Your clients are former medical professionals," the judge corrected. "Both have had their licenses suspended pending investigation. Both are accused of systematically torturing a helpless woman for financial gain. Bail denied." That clip played on every news channel. Amina's face twisted with rage as bailiffs led her away. Marcus, blank and defeated, as if he'd finally understood the magnitude of what he'd lost. Their house was seized for restitution. I drove by once, seeing the foreclosure notice on the door. The BMW gone from the driveway, repossessed. The basement window, once covered, now visible. Crime scene tape still fluttering. A reporter found me in the hospital parking lot. "Mrs. Chen, how does it feel knowing your testimony will likely send your son to prison for decades?" I looked at the camera. "My son died 5 years ago. The man who kept my sister in that basement was a stranger wearing my son's face. The real Marcus, the boy I raised, would never have done this." That quote became the headline, "He was a stranger in my son's face." The trial date was set, 6 months away. Time for Kem to recover, for evidence to be processed, for the full weight of justice to be prepared. But the court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict. Marcus and Amina Chen were monsters, and I was the brave sister who'd saved the day, if only it felt that simple. The ICU at St. Mary's Hospital felt like coming home. I'd worked these halls for 30 years, knew every corner, every doctor, every protocol. Now I sat beside Kem's bed in room 347, watching monitors I'd read thousands of times before, waiting for my sister to come back to me. Dr. Kamar had assembled the best team, neurologists, psychiatrists, pharmacists. They were weaning her off the sedatives slowly, carefully, following protocols designed for long-term sedation withdrawal. "It's not like waking someone from surgery," Dr. Rebecca Santos explained, the neurologist assigned to Kem's case. 5 years of continuous sedation has altered her brain chemistry. We have to bring her back gradually or risk seizures, psychosis, even permanent damage. Day 1. They reduced the propofol drip by 25%. Kem's eyelids fluttered. Nothing more, but it was something. I held her hand, talking to her about anything and everything. "You're at St. Mary's. You're safe. The kids are safe. Marcus and Amina are in jail." I squeezed her cold fingers. "I'm so sorry I didn't find you sooner, Kem. I'm so sorry I believed them." Day 3. Her fingers twitched in my hand. Dr. Santos reviewed the EEG. "Brain activity is increasing. She's fighting to surface." I stayed overnight, sleeping in the chair beside her bed, waking every time a monitor beeped. Other nurses checked on us, colleagues who remembered me, who were horrified by what had happened. "You trained me," one young nurse said, tears in her eyes. "You taught me that nursing is about protecting the vulnerable, and you did exactly that." Day 5. Kem's eyes opened. Not focused, not aware, but open. I watched her pupils contract in the light, a primitive response that meant her brain was still functioning. "That's it, honey. Come back to us. You're safe now. I've got you." Day 7. Jade? The word was barely a whisper, slurred and confused, but it was my name, in my sister's voice, after 5 years of silence. I pressed the call button, crying too hard to speak coherently. "She's awake. She said my name." Dr. Santos rushed in, checking responses, shining lights in Kem's eyes, asking questions. "Kem, can you hear me? I'm Dr. Santos. You're in the hospital. You're safe. Can you squeeze my hand?" Her fingers moved weakly. "Good. Very good. Kem, do you know what year it is?" 2000. Her eyes struggled to focus. 20. Not quite. It's 2025. You've been unconscious for a long time, but you're safe now. Your sister is here." Kem's eyes found mine. Recognition flickered, then confusion, then something like terror. "Where?" Marcus said, "Home hospice." "Shh. We'll explain everything, but first you need to rest. Your body has been through trauma." Over the next week, as Kem became more lucid, we told her the truth in small doses. Dr. Santos warned me about the psychological impact. "She's going to grieve," she said. 5 years is a significant portion of a life. She'll need extensive therapy." But I underestimated the depth of Kem's trauma. 2 weeks post-awakening, she was strong enough to talk. Really talk. I sat beside her bed, holding her hand, as she recounted 5 years of nightmares. "I remember the accident," she said, her voice stronger now but still fragile. "The drunk driver, the impact, waking up in the hospital with Marcus beside me, crying, saying everything would be okay. He transferred you to home hospice. He said it would be better, more comfortable. I was so weak, Jade. I couldn't protest. And then..." Her face crumpled. "The first injection, he said it was for pain, but the world got fuzzy, and I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could hear everything, feel everything. But I was trapped." She described 5 years of twilight existence, hearing Marcus and Amina walking overhead, hearing the children playing, hearing life happening while she lay paralyzed, feeling the bed sores develop, unable to cry out, feeling her muscles atrophy, unable to move, feeling her life draining away while her nephew stole her money and discussed letting her die. "I tried to wake up," she sobbed. "So many times. I'd fight the drugs, manage to move a finger, flutter an eyelid, and then he'd increase the dose, push me deeper. I'd hear him say patient unresponsive, like I wasn't even human, like I was just a thing." I held her while she cried, deep, wrenching sobs for the years stolen, for the life she'd lost, for the nephew who'd betrayed her so completely. "My dog," she said suddenly. "Max. Marcus said he was fine." "Is he?" I had to tell her. "Max died 3 years ago, honey. I'm so sorry." She grieved for her golden retriever, for the faithful companion who'd waited and then died thinking she'd abandoned him. She grieved for her friends who'd mourned her and moved on. She grieved for Malik and Sarah who'd grown from babies to children without her. "I heard them," she whispered. "The kids. I'd hear them laugh, and I wanted so badly to reach out to them, to be part of their lives. But I was just the monster in the basement. They know the truth now, and Kem, they want to meet you. Really meet you." She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much suffering. "What about Marcus? Did he say why?" "Money. He wanted your pension, your savings, your life insurance. He was going to wait until I died naturally, then overdose you and collect the policy." She absorbed that in silence. Then, I heard that conversation. I heard him tell Amina about waiting for you to die. And I couldn't warn you. Couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but lie there knowing you were in danger too. That broke me completely. My sister, trapped in a pharmaceutical prison, had spent her final conscious thoughts worrying about protecting me. "I promise you," I said fiercely, "we will get every penny back. We will make them pay for every single day they stole from you. You will have justice." Kem squeezed my hand weakly. "I don't want revenge, Jade. I just want my life back." "Then that's what we'll fight for. Your life, your dignity, your future. All of it." 3 weeks after Kem woke up, Dr. Santos cleared her for visitors beyond immediate family. I brought Malik and Sarah to the hospital on a Saturday morning, preparing them carefully for what they'd see. "Aunt Chem is awake, but she's still weak," I explained in the parking lot. "She's connected to machines that are helping her get better, and she might cry when she sees you, not because she's sad, but because she's happy." Malik, always the more serious one, nodded solemnly. "Is she still scary?" "She was never scary, sweetheart. Your father lied about that. Aunt Chem is kind and gentle, and she loves you both very much." Sarah clutched her stuffed rabbit. "What if she's mad at us for not helping her?" I knelt down, meeting her eyes. "She knows you were children. She knows you were threatened. She's not mad at you. She wants to meet you." We walked through the hospital corridors, those same hallways I'd walked for 30 years. Now feeling different, sacred somehow. Other nurses smiled at us. They all knew the story by now. Room 347. I opened the door slowly. Kem was sitting up in bed, her hair clean and brushed, wearing her own pajamas instead of a hospital gown. She'd gained a little weight, color returning to her cheeks. When she saw the children, her face transformed, joy mixing with tears. "Malik, Sarah." Her voice broke. "You're so big." They hung back, uncertain, all their memories of the lady in the basement warring with what I'd told them. "It's okay," I encouraged. "Go say hello." Malik approached first, cautious. "Hi, Aunt Chem. I'm Malik. I'm 8 years old now." "You were just a baby when I last saw you. Well, really saw you. I heard you playing upstairs sometimes." "You did?" His eyes widened. "Could you hear everything?" "A lot of things." "Your laughter, you practicing your multiplication tables, Sarah singing." Sarah stepped forward, hugging her rabbit tight. "I sang to you once, at the top of the basement stairs. I thought maybe you could hear me, and you'd know someone remembered you." Kem's tears spilled over. "I heard you, sweetheart. It helped so much. On the worst days, I'd remember your song." That broke through Sarah's fear. She climbed carefully onto the bed, settling beside Kem. "What song was it?" "You Are My Sunshine," over and over. "That's Grandma's favorite." Sarah looked at me, then back at Kem. "Grandma saved you." "She did. Your grandma is the bravest person I know." "She saved us too," Malik said quietly. "Mom and Dad were mean. They said if we told anyone about you, they'd send Grandma away forever. They said you were sick in the head and dangerous." "I'm not dangerous. I'm just someone who got hurt and needed help." Kem opened her arm and Malik climbed up on the other side of the bed. "But your grandma found me, and now we're all safe." We spent the afternoon together. Kem told them stories about me as a girl. Funny ones, embarrassing ones, tales of sisterhood that made the children laugh. In turn, they told her about school, their friends, their fears about what came next. "Do we have to see Mom and Dad again?" Sarah asked. Kem looked at me, then back at the children. "That's not my decision, but I can tell you this. Family isn't just about who you're born to. It's about who protects you, who loves you, who makes you feel safe. Your grandma? She's family in every way that matters." Over the next weeks, we established a routine. Family therapy sessions with Dr. Torres, helping the children process everything, the secrets, the threats, the loss of their parents, individual therapy for Kem, dealing with her trauma and grief, and family time, rebuilding what Marcus and Amina had tried to destroy. Kem was moved to a rehabilitation facility, physical therapy to rebuild muscle mass, occupational therapy to relearn daily tasks, speech therapy to overcome the effects of prolonged sedation, and psychological therapy to process 5 years of consciousness trapped in an unresponsive body. I started custody proceedings. The judge was the same one who denied Marcus and Amina bail, Patricia Coleman, a fierce advocate for children. "Mrs. Chen, you understand that at 70 years old, taking on full custody of 2 children is a significant undertaking?" "Your Honor, I raised 1 child who became a monster. I'd like the opportunity to raise 2 more the right way." She smiled. The children's testimony, their therapist's evaluation, and the social worker's recommendation all support placing them with you. Marcus and Amina Chen haven't contested custody. Their attorneys advise them it would be futile. They have no defense. None whatsoever. Preliminary custody is granted to you with permanent custody hearing scheduled after the criminal trial concludes. I drove to the rehab facility to tell Kem the news. She was in physical therapy, taking shaky steps between parallel bars with a therapist supporting her. 10 steps today, the therapist announced. Next week, we'll try 15. After the session, exhausted but determined, Kem sat with me in the courtyard. "I got custody," I told her. Temporary, pending the trial, but the judge seems inclined to make it permanent. Those kids deserve stability, love, safety. She squeezed my hand. Thank you for saving all of us. We saved each other. You survived 5 years that would have killed most people. The children endured threats and terror but kept their humanity. And I learned that being soft doesn't mean being weak. No, Kem agreed. It means knowing when to be surgical. We sat in comfortable silence, watching birds in the courtyard, feeling sunlight neither of us had taken for granted since this nightmare began. Somewhere across town, Marcus and Amina sat in county jail. The trial loomed ahead, months of testimony, evidence, trauma, relived in a courtroom. But here, in this moment, we were healing. We were family, and we were finally safe. District Attorney Rebecca Montoya had 23 years of prosecutorial experience, and she told me this was the most clear-cut case of elder abuse she'd ever seen. 8 felony charges for each defendant, she explained in her office, surrounded by evidence boxes that contained my family's destruction. Elder abuse, kidnapping, fraud, falsifying government documents, medical malpractice, conspiracy to commit murder, identity theft, and child endangerment. Will it stick? Jade, I have recordings of your son discussing when to kill your sister. I have 5 years of financial records showing systematic theft. I have medical evidence of torture. I have children testifying to threats and psychological abuse. She smiled grimly. The only question is whether they'll take a plea deal or force us to trial. They chose trial. Their new attorney, a public defender named Michael Brennan, who looked exhausted before we even started, had apparently advised against it. Their defense strategy is desperation, Rebecca told me before my deposition. They're claiming you manipulated everything, that Kem was terminal anyway and they were just managing her care, that the frozen accounts were your doing, not theirs. They're going to paint you as a vindictive old woman with a grudge. Let them try. My deposition lasted 6 hours. I walked the DA through every detail, the 4 a.m. discovery, the basement horror, the medication doses that were 3 times safe levels. I explained bed sores in clinical terms that made the court reporter pause, looking sick. I presented the financial forensics, $252,000 in pension theft, $180,000 in savings drained, $45,000 in credit card fraud. Mrs. Chen, Rebecca asked, as a medical professional with 40 years of experience, what is your assessment of the care your sister received? It wasn't care. It was systematic torture disguised as medical treatment. My sister was kept in a pharmaceutical coma for 5 years, not for her benefit, but for theirs. Every bed sore, every muscle atrophy, every moment of consciousness suppressed by drugs was a choice they made, and they made that choice every single day for 1,125 days. The defense attorney tried to shake me during cross-examination. Mrs. Chen, isn't it true you have a financial interest in these charges? Your sister's restored pension benefits you directly. My sister's pension belongs to my sister. I have my own money. But you're seeking custody of the children, which would give you access to child support payments. I'm seeking custody because their parents terrorized them into silence while torturing a helpless woman. Would you leave children in that environment? He switched tactics. You taught your son about medicine, correct? About caring for patients? I taught my son about human dignity in hospitals. I looked directly at him. He learned nothing. That quote made every news outlet. The prosecution built their case methodically. Dr. Kumar testified about how Marcus had exploited his signature. Hospital administrators presented Marcus's disciplinary record, complaints about rough patient handling, medication errors swept under the rug. One incident where he'd yelled at an elderly patient for being difficult. A former coworker testified, Marcus talked about his aunt's money like he was entitled to it, like it was already his, just tied up in an inconvenient living person. Amina's past emerged during discovery. Gambling debts she'd hidden from Marcus, $30,000 owed to casinos, creditors threatening lawsuits, a prior fraud charge from 8 years ago, dismissed on a technicality when the witness disappeared. The prosecution argued motive. Amina needed money desperately, and Kem's pension was a solution too tempting to resist. The media coverage intensified. Dateline NBC did a full episode called The Sister in the Basement. 2020 ran a special. Internet sleuths dug through Marcus and Amina's social media, finding their wedding registry from 6 years ago. They'd registered for a $50,000 honeymoon to the Maldives. The timeline made people sick. Kem had been in the basement for 11 months when they got married. While exchanging vows about love and commitment, they'd been slowly draining the life from a woman who couldn't even cry for help. Public opinion was unanimous. Comment sections filled with rage. I hope they never see daylight again. That poor woman, 5 years of her life gone. The grandmother is a hero. She saved everyone. The morning the trial began, I stood on the courthouse steps with Rebecca. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. I thought about Marcus and Amina inside, waiting in their orange jumpsuits, finally facing consequences they'd thought they'd never see. "Are you ready?" Rebecca asked. I looked at the courthouse doors, those imposing pillars of justice that I'd passed 1,000 times without thinking about. Now they represented something different. Vindication, protection, truth. I've been ready since I looked through that keyhole at 4 a.m. and saw my supposedly dead sister hooked to machines in my son's basement. I straightened my shoulders. Let's make sure they never hurt anyone again. Day 1 of the trial, and the courtroom was packed. Media in the back rows, Dr. Kamar sitting with me. And in the gallery, wearing civilian clothes for the first time in months, sat Kem, still weak, using a cane, but determined to witness justice. Rebecca Montoya began with the timeline. Every date, every transaction, every stolen dollar projected onto screens for the jury to see. Then came the basement photos. The jury gasped. Several jurors covered their mouths. One woman in the front row started crying openly when she saw the bed sores, those deep infected wounds that screamed of neglect, so profound it bordered on torture. "This is what 5 years of care looks like," Rebecca said quietly. "This is what happens when medical professionals use their knowledge not to heal, but to exploit." Dr. Patricia Morris, a forensic medical expert, took the stand. "These injuries are consistent with a patient left in the same position for extended periods. The bed sores are stage 3, possibly progressing to stage 4. This represents months, possibly years, of inadequate care. Any competent nurse would have prevented this with basic repositioning and wound care." "Both defendants are registered nurses?" "Yes, they would have known exactly what they were doing, or rather, what they weren't doing." The financial expert followed. Charts showing the flow of money, Kem's pension into Marcus and Amina's account, then out to luxury purchases, BMWs, vacations, home renovations. The numbers were devastating. $252,000 in pension theft alone. Day 3 brought Kem's testimony via video link. She wasn't strong enough for the courtroom yet. The jury watched her on the large screen as she described her nightmare. "I remember waking in the hospital after the accident. Marcus was there, crying, telling me everything would be okay, that he'd take care of me." Her voice wavered but held strong. "He moved me to his house, said it would be better than a facility, more family-oriented. I trusted him." "What happened after you arrived at his house?" "He gave me an injection, said it was for pain, but the world went fuzzy. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't work. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. And then I was trapped." "Trapped how?" "Conscious, aware, hearing everything, feeling everything, but unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything except exist in this terrible twilight." Tears streamed down her face. I could hear Marcus checking on me. I'd try so hard to move, to let him know I was awake. Once I managed to flutter my eyelids. I was so proud. Finally, he'd know I was conscious. He'd help me. Instead, I heard him increase the medication. push me deeper under. The courtroom was silent except for crying. Even the judge wiped her eyes. Did you ever give up hope? Every day. But then I'd hear my sister's voice upstairs, or the children laughing, and I'd think, someone will find me. Someone will help. It took 5 years, but Jade finally did. Day 5 was the children's testimony, presented in closed session and shown to the jury on video. Malik, his young face so serious, explaining how his parents had threatened him. Sarah describing nightmares where she was trapped like Aunt Chem, unable to move, unable to scream. 3 jurors cried openly. The jury foreman looked like he wanted to commit violence. Day 7. My turn on the stand. I walked through everything calmly, methodically, using the clinical precision of my nursing career. No emotional outbursts, just facts, dates, medication doses, financial records, the recording of Marcus discussing waiting for me to die so they could finish killing Kem. The defense attorney tried to rattle me. Mrs. Chen, isn't it convenient that you discovered this alleged abuse just as you were having problems with your son? I discovered it because I woke up at 4 a.m. and followed the sound of medical equipment. What's convenient is that I have 40 years of nursing experience to recognize elder abuse when I see it. You orchestrated the account freezes, the investigations, everything. You manipulated the system. I documented crimes and reported them to appropriate authorities. That's not manipulation. That's citizenship. You turned your own son over to police. I saved my sister from torture and my grandchildren from being accessories to kidnapping. If my son is in prison, it's because of his choices, not mine. Cross-examination ended quickly. I was unshakable because I was telling the truth. Then came the defense's case. Brennan tried to paint Marcus as a devoted nephew but had no evidence. No witnesses who could testify to proper care. No explanation for the stolen money or the forged documents. Marcus took the stand against his attorney's advice. It was a disaster. I was protecting her, he insisted. She was going to die anyway. I just wanted her comfortable. Then why the heavy sedation? Rebecca asked. She was agitated. She would have hurt herself. Medical records show she was stabilizing before you took her. Her prognosis was 70% recovery. You kept her sedated to keep her money, didn't you? That's not... I needed to... You needed her pension. You needed her savings. You kept her alive just long enough to drain her accounts, then planned to let her die when your mother died naturally. Isn't that what you discussed on the recorded phone call? Marcus's face crumbled. I was trying to provide for my family. By torturing a helpless woman for 5 years? He had no answer. Amina refused to testify, invoking her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. The jury noticed. Closing arguments were brief. The evidence spoke for itself. Rebecca showed the basement photos one more time, then Kem's face on the screen, before and after. A vibrant teacher reduced to a drugged prisoner. 5 years, Rebecca said quietly. 125 days of torture. How many of those days could have been prevented if these defendants had done the right thing, even once? How many of those days did they spend shopping with stolen money, vacationing with fraudulent credit cards, renovating their house with funds drained from a woman who couldn't even open her eyes to protest? The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty, on all counts, both defendants. Marcus collapsed. Amina screamed. And in the gallery, Kem squeezed my hand, tears of relief streaming down her face. Justice, finally. The sentencing hearing was scheduled 3 weeks after the verdict. Marcus and Amina had lost weight in county jail, their faces gaunt and hollow. They'd been held in separate facilities, Marcus at the men's detention center, Amina at the women's, unable to coordinate their stories or support each other through what was coming. Judge Patricia Coleman presided, her expression severe as she reviewed the pre-sentencing reports. Before I issue my ruling, I'll hear victim impact statements. Kem went first. She'd practiced with Dr. Torres, preparing for this moment. Using her cane, she walked slowly to the podium, stronger than she'd been during trial, but still fragile, still rebuilding. "You stole 5 years of my life," she said, her voice steady despite tears. 5 years I can never get back. I missed watching my great-niece and nephew grow up. I missed my dog dying. He waited for me, but I never came home. I missed my friends, my job, my life. You took all of that for money, for things, for a BMW and designer handbags and vacations. She turned to look at Marcus directly. "I loved you. I held you as a baby. I taught you to read, and you kept me in a basement like an animal, like a thing to be exploited and discarded." Marcus looked away, couldn't meet her eyes. Next, I stood. "I taught my son about human dignity in hospitals. I taught him that every patient deserves respect, care, and compassion. I taught him that nursing is about protecting the vulnerable." I paused, looking at him. "You betrayed everything I taught you. You betrayed your profession, your family, and yourself. You're my son, but I don't recognize the man you became." Dr. Kamar spoke about trust exploited, how Marcus had used his position, his credentials, his apparent legitimacy to deceive everyone, including the doctor who'd signed off on the transfer papers. The children's therapist read statements from Malik and Sarah. They'd written letters to the judge explaining their nightmares, their fear, their relief at finally being safe. Sarah's letter ended. "I used to think all grown-ups were good. Now I know some aren't, but Grandma is, and Aunt Chem is. And they taught me that good is stronger than bad." Judge Coleman reviewed the evidence one final time, her face grim. Then she delivered her ruling. "Marcus Chen, you are sentenced to 25 years in state prison on charges of elder abuse, kidnapping, fraud, falsifying government documents, and conspiracy to commit murder through neglect. Amina Chen, you are sentenced to 20 years on charges of accessory to elder abuse, fraud, identity theft, and child endangerment. Neither of you will be eligible for early parole." She continued, her voice hard. "Your medical licenses are permanently revoked. You will never work in healthcare again. Restitution is ordered in the amount of $252,000 plus accrued interest to be returned to Kem Patterson. An additional $100,000 in punitive damages for pain and suffering. Your house will be sold, with all proceeds going to your victims." The bailiffs moved forward to remove them. Marcus turned to me one last time. "Mom, please, I'm your son. I made mistakes, but I'm still your son." I stood, meeting his eyes. "I have no son. I buried my son 5 years ago when I thought I was burying my sister. The man standing before me is a stranger who wore my son's face while torturing a helpless woman." I looked at Malik and Sarah beside me, at Kem with her cane. "I have 2 grandchildren and a sister. That's my family now." Amina was screaming as they led her out. "This is all your fault, old woman. You destroyed our lives." "No," I said quietly, though she couldn't hear me over her own screaming. "You destroyed your own lives. I just made sure you faced consequences." The courtroom doors closed behind them. 25 years. 20 years. They'd be in their 60s before they saw freedom again. Kem leaned against me, exhausted but relieved. "It's really over." "Yes. Now we rebuild." 6 months after sentencing, we moved into our new home. It was everything Marcus and Amina's house wasn't. Bright, open, full of windows that let in natural light. A modest 3-bedroom ranch in a neighborhood with sidewalks and friendly neighbors. No basement. I'd insisted on that. Ground floor only, every room visible, nothing hidden. The children chose their own paint colors. Malik picked blue for his room and covered the walls with posters of planets and rockets. Sarah chose lavender and hung fairy lights that made her space glow like magic. Kem and I shared the master suite. She wasn't ready to sleep alone yet, still woke, sometimes panicking that she was back in that basement bed. "Listen," I told her on our first morning, sitting on the porch with coffee while the children played in the yard. Children laughing, birds singing, cars driving by with people going about normal lives. No mechanical humming, no locks clicking, just normal. Kem smiled, though tears slid down her cheeks. I didn't think I'd ever have normal again. Her recovery was remarkable. Physical therapy 3 times a week had her walking with just a cane now. No walker needed. She'd regained 30 pounds, color in her cheeks, life in her eyes. Cognitive therapy had helped restore most of her memory. 5 years were gone, but everything before was intact. She remembered her teaching career, her students, her life before Marcus destroyed it. I got a second chance at life, she told the support group where she now volunteered. I shouldn't have. Statistically, 5 years of heavy sedation should have caused permanent brain damage. But I'm here. I'm walking. I'm thinking. I'm living. The children thrived in ways that broke my heart with relief. Malik's nightmares stopped after 3 months. Sarah's stress rash disappeared. They were in therapy, processing trauma, but they were also just being kids, fighting over video games, leaving Legos everywhere, laughing at stupid jokes. One afternoon, Malik looked up from his homework. "Grandma, we're doing a family tree project at school. What should I write for parents?" I saw Kem tense, waiting for the answer. Write that your parents made choices that hurt people, and now they're facing consequences for those choices. But write that your family is Grandma, Great Aunt Kem, and the people who love you. Family isn't just blood, sweetheart. It's who shows up, who protects you, who loves you enough to fight for you. Can I write that you saved us? You can write that we saved each other. The financial recovery was complete. All stolen money returned with interest. $267,000 total. Kem's pension restored with back payments for the 5 years she'd been denied access to her own money. The life insurance policy paid out early under exceptional circumstances. The insurance company didn't want the PR nightmare of denying a claim for a woman who'd been kept prisoner. The civil suit against Marcus and Amina succeeded, even though they had nothing left. Their wages would be garnished for life. 25% of whatever they earned in prison jobs, plus any future income if they ever got out. Another $180,000 judgment that would hang over them forever. We didn't need the money, but it mattered that they'd keep paying, keep being held accountable, keep facing consequences until their debt was satisfied. I started volunteering at an elder abuse prevention nonprofit, teaching workshops on recognizing the signs, documenting evidence, building cases. Trust your instincts, I told audiences. If something feels wrong, it probably is, and you have more power than you think. Kem spoke at support groups for abuse survivors. "You are not alone," she'd say, her voice strong now. "I survived 5 years of pharmaceutical torture. If I can come back from that, you can survive whatever you're facing. Ask for help. Build your team. Fight back." Dr. Kumar and his family became part of our extended family. Weekly dinners where the children played with his grandchildren, where we laughed and told stories and slowly healed together. One evening, Sarah asked me, "Grandma, are you sad about Dad being in prison?" I thought about it carefully. I'm sad about the choices he made. I'm sad about the person he became, but I'm not sad that he's facing consequences. Because if he wasn't in prison, you wouldn't be safe. Aunt Kem wouldn't be here. Our family would still be broken. "We're not broken anymore," Malik said. "We're different, but not broken." Exactly right. Thanksgiving arrived, our first holiday together in our new home. Dr. Kumar's family joined us, along with Patricia Mendez from APS and Rebecca Montoya, the DA who'd prosecuted the case. Our chosen family gathered around a table overflowing with food and gratitude as we went around sharing what we were thankful for. Sarah looked at me with those wise beyond her years eyes. "What are you thankful for, Grandma?" I looked at Kem, fully recovered, laughing at something Dr. Kumar said. I looked at Malik and Sarah, safe and healing and whole. I looked at the bright, open rooms of our home with no secrets, no basements, no darkness. I'm thankful I trusted my instincts at 4 a.m., I said. I'm thankful I had the knowledge to recognize abuse and the courage to fight back. I'm thankful for everyone at this table who helped save our family. Kem raised her glass. I'm thankful for a sister who never stopped fighting, who refused to let me disappear, who proved that love is stronger than greed. We toasted, apple juice for the kids, wine for the adults, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Later, after everyone left and the children were asleep, Kem and I sat on the porch watching stars. 5 years, she said quietly. Gone. I'll never get them back. No, but we have decades ahead, and we're going to live every single day. Promise me something, Jade. Anything. If you ever suspect someone is suffering in silence, a neighbor, a patient, anyone, promise me you'll do what you did for me. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Build your case. And fight. I promise. We sat in comfortable silence. 2 sisters who'd survived, who'd fought, who'd won. Somewhere, Marcus and Amina were in their prison cells. Separate facilities, no contact allowed. 25 years and 20 years stretching ahead of them. Payment for 1,125 days of torture. For $252,000 stolen. For innocence destroyed. For trust betrayed. But here, in our bright home with no basements, we were free. If you or someone you know is facing elder abuse, call the National Elder Abuse Hotline, 1-800-6797-11116. You are not alone and help is available. Which city are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. I love hearing from all of you. If you believe families should be built on love and truth, not blood and lies, hit that like button. Subscribe if you believe in standing up for those who can't stand for themselves. Your support helps me share these stories of justice and hope. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's questioning their instincts, who suspects something's wrong, who needs to know they have the power to fight back. Remember, silence protects abusers. Documentation builds cases. Courage changes lives. You are stronger than you know. Epilogue. Marcus Chen remains incarcerated at Valley State Prison, eligible for parole in 2048. Amina Chen remains incarcerated at Central California Women's Facility, eligible for parole in 2043. Jade Chen, age 71, continues volunteering with elder abuse prevention organizations. Kem Patterson, age 75, has returned to substitute teaching and speaks regularly at survivor support groups. Malik Chen, age 9, and Sarah Chen, age 7, are thriving in school and therapy. They're working on a book titled How Our Grandma Saved Our Family. Dr. Omar Kamar implemented new hospital protocols for home hospice transfers, preventing future abuse. Love won.